Hello everyone, I'm Vice President of Atomy Yoon Yong-sun. Thank you for welcoming. Now let's talk about ХЕМОХИM. Can you see the screen? Yes? Whenever I see ХЕМOХIM, I wonder what this is about. So I want to tell you the effects of ХЕМOХIM. I really want you to have this time. Because when I meet people, they tell me the effects of ХЕМOХIM all differently. Some people say, oh, it cured my atopic dermatitis. And some people say, oh, I get to be pregnant from taking ХЕМOХIM. And some people say, my osteoporosis got better thanks to ХЕМOХIM. And some people say that, oh, my cancer got better from ХЕМOХIM. Do you think doctors will believe this? Whenever I hear these stories, I think like, oh, it's kind of dubious. What's the rationale behind this? So I studied about ХЕМOХIM. Why is this happening? So ХЕМOХIM has all different effects for all different people. It can help improve the immunity and improve the fatigue. That's the two major effects. But there are too many other effects that people say about ХЕМOХIM. So I want to tell you why is it like that. So let's talk about ХЕМOХIM. There are a lot of symptoms following degradation of immunity. So one of them is inflammation. If you have a lot of inflammation, that you will lose immunity, then it will lead to chronic inflammation. So it's like sister and brother. Inflammation and immunity is really closely related to each other, like siblings. And there are two types of inflammation. One is acute one, and the other is chronic. So acute is like when you walk on the street and when you sprain your ankle, it will get really swollen and the blood will be get around that part and you will limp when you walk because it is painful. So we call this acute inflammation. And when you sprain your ankle, the doctor says you shouldn't be walking for the next 48 hours and do some icing. So that's the standard cure. Actually, this is my trade secret. So when you have some pain in your leg and ankle and feet, but the X-ray scan says it's okay, the ultrasonic scan says it is okay, and most of the doctors says that it seems like your ligament is got loosened, so you should get some treatment and come back in 2 to 3 weeks. So that's one of the treatment that doctors give if the injury is not really clear. So after 2 to 3 weeks, it gets better because the inflammation is gone. So from the cast, your foot is fixed, and if you take some painkillers and anti-inflammation agent, it will get better. But some friends of mine, they play soccer, and as they play soccer, sometimes they sprain their ankle and they get some injury and get some bruise. And there's a team doctor. He's not a really specialized doctor, but and he is spraying some medicine on the ankle. And I told you that for the next 48 hours from the sprain, you should not move. So with that spray, it will get swollen even more. So for the acute inflammation, when you get hurt, you need to fix it, put some cast, and do some icing up to 72 hours. And the spray should be after that.
And the pus spray should be applied later on. So after soccer playing, they were spraying something. People are coming to me saying that. And that is ice gel. So national team soccer players are spraying the ice sprayer. This is not sensing pus. So maybe people are familiar with the spray and they actually do the spraying, but you shouldn't do that. So acute inflammation gets better within 3 to 4 weeks. So when you get hurt, when you get injured, you go to the hospital and you get the painkillers and anti-inflammatory pills. And these pills are not good, some are saying. I don't want to take them. People are too worried about it, but you don't have to be worried because the painkillers and anti-inflammatory pills are okay. They're very safe within 3 to 4 weeks. It's better to just keep taking them for that period to get better. If you don't take them and if the pains get continued, the acute pain, the acute inflammation will become chronic. If that becomes chronic, the bacteria or viral impacts get continued, and then it creates another and another inflammation. And this means the inflammation got chronic. And the tissues, your tissues will get hurt and damaged, and there will be fibrosis. It means you have the scar. So that's the easy explanation. So if there's fibrosis, the cells around them, they don't want to get fibrosis just like that cell. So they try really hard, and in that process, they all get fibrosis, and all the cells want to grow by themselves. And just to avoid fibrosis, they grow exponentially to become a cancer cell. So fibrosis is very connected to cancer as well. So the chronic inflammation is very bad for us. If it's acute, it you get the swelling and white cells and others. Our cells clean the site. That is called macrophage. That is acute inflammation. And the problem is when you get chronic inflammation. If the chronic inflammation happens in brain, you get dementia. And there could be some cardiovascular and hurt, liver, and even your reproductive organ. It can lead to infertility. So it goes all across your body, producing a lot of problems. That is what chronic inflammation is. So why does that happen? There could be some chemicals, toxic chemicals. So there's poisonous substance, trans fats, and other bad substances that can produce blood blood glucose spikes. And in our body, within our body, we have capabilities to control that, to manage that. But if you're stressed out, if we don't work out much, these cannot be solved within our body. What happens in that case? There could be a lot of venomous substances and toxins. To be able to solve the problems, the whole immune system starts operating, and there could be an excessive vitalization because of that. This is the starting point of chronic inflammation. If you look at this car, the genetic transformation happens. If you have chronic inflammation, genes become transformed. and there is the oxygen, active oxygen, and among cytokines, there is something called TNF alpha. It is one of the things that transform the gene. And cytokine number 1, cytokine number 6, these also transform our genes. The result, because of the genetic transformation, there could be some mutation and other cancerous reactions. And if you look at the screen, because of the chronic inflammation, there could be a lot of diseases that happen. And the most common word in the screen, what is it? What is the most frequent word that pops up? Cytokine. What is cytokine? Cytokines create a lot of chronic inflammation. Number 1, number 6. Please remember, cytokine number 1 and number 6. And TNF alpha. So these 3 are the main causes, the main sources of chronic inflammation. So these inflammations happen, and TNF alpha, cytokine number 1 and number 6, these produce a lot of inflammation over and over again. And to be able to resolve that, our immune system starts operating very actively, and it is tired after the process, and the tissues get hurt. There's a disease then. We get stressed out, and hormonal balance also gets affected. If you look at the screen, whether or not we have chronic inflammation. So there are actually a total of 19 questions, but we have 5 main questions. If you check 4 out of total 5 questions, you have chronic inflammation. You have weak nails, you have skin troubles, you have indigestion, you have gut problems, and you cannot focus well, and I don't feel refreshed after sleep, and I have blood glucose spikes, and I enjoy instant food. If you check 4 of them, you have very high possibility of having chronic inflammation. Why is this so problematic? Because a lot of toxic components, bacteria, a lot of toxic materials go into your body and they don't get resolved and they become chronic. And if you go chronic, there will be a lot of metabolic diseases, high cholesterol, dementia, depression, autism, all the things happen. COVID-19 swept our country too, right? And some people recovered from COVID-19. Some of them are okay, are well recovered, and the others have pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, liver cancer. There are some cases like that, even though they went through the same COVID-19 disease. After COVID, there are weird diseases that happen to some of them. So during COVID-19, it was actually convenient for doctors to diagnose because patients come to them saying, I have back pain, I feel stuck in my chest, and I went to another hospital, MRI, CT test, everything was normal. I don't know what's happening to me. And then doctors can say, have you gone through COVID-19? That's actually the after effect of COVID. So we talk about what is the main cause of these kind of new conditions that happen to people, some people. So we were asking why and why over and over again. And in fact, you can see here in the screen, the virus comes in. then there are problems, and the problems don't get solved, and the inflammation becomes chronic. Pancreatic disease, liver disease, hard to breathe, bone issues, back pains, and some people cannot see. They have lower vision, significantly lower vision, forgetfulness. And if they get the medical test, everything is normal. So main cause, we believe, is chronic inflammation. So in our everyday life, if you can take control of the inflammations, chronic inflammations, you can prevent future diseases and conditions. And HEMOHIM, I want to say, they have anti-inflammatory effects. We have papers, we have research papers that back this. TNF alpha, cytokine number 1, cytokine number 6. Those causes are lowered by HEMOHIM. They're controlled. And cytokine number 10 is increased, and 20, the number 10 is increased. Number 10 is actually very good. And the bad ones, TNF alpha and number 1 and number 6, are lowered by HEMOHIM. So chronic inflammations can be controlled, can be regulated by HEMOHIM, our product. I actually wanted to compare HEMOHIM to something. Our blood moves all across our body. Why is that? To provide oxygen. Second, to provide nutrients. That is one of the biggest reasons why blood moves around. And if the vessels are not good, not healthy or stuck, the nutrients and the oxygen cannot be provided very well, very smoothly. So I want to compare HEMOHIM to a pipe, the water pipe that provides water to different households without any stoppage. The water goes all the way to your house, to your home. That is what I want to make a comparison to. Immunity and fatigue reduction. And there are a lot of patents, as you might well know. However, there is one thing, one worry for us. There is swine flu, MERS, COVID-19. So every 5 years there is an epidemic. There is an infectious disease, and we are scared. 2020, COVID happened, and 5 years later, it is next year? Of course, it's not always 5 years of period, 5 years of term. The medical sector, the medical industry is worried about the AI, bird influenza. So, because there are a lot of birds in the sky, there is a limitation of getting the virus currently, but there could be some transformation of the virus, and it might be modified to become more easier to end up in our body, and then the disaster could happen in the future. So what should we do? That is what the medical professionals are worrying about. Anyway, so in everyday life, no matter what, of course, yeah, I also caught COVID. I was fortunate enough to, have normal memory and smell as well. I didn't have any after effect after COVID-19. And some people actually told me that I have different voices. So I tested, and I was tested positive for COVID. So I got kicked away from my house. I didn't have fever, I didn't have any conditions, but I still had COVID because I was tested positive. And one good thing about having a COVID is everyone was taking care of me. making phone calls to me, so I thought it was worth catching. So anyways, there will be a lot of other infectious diseases in the future. And if you want to be free from inflammation, chronic inflammation in particular, you have to have different habits, life habits. No instant food, no instant products. And if you have diabetes, you can do some regulatory practices. If you do regulations, you can cover this very well. And you drink a lot of water and sleep well. And if you're stressed out, you give prayers. If you're stressed out every day, all the time, maybe next Friday you can join the meeting, the Bible meeting, because I'm the instructor.
So maybe it'll be difficult for you to do this all the time. That's why you need to take ХЕМОХИМ. You need to take ХЕМOХIM on a regular basis, like a meal. In my personal opinion, ХЕМОХIM noni and probiotics, I think it's just like meals. So I take all these things all the time to regulate the chronic inflammation, to boost my immunity. So that's one way to continue to do this business for a long time. So ХЕМOХIM has so many advantages. It protects our wellness, happiness, and our health. It's really a great product. We need to share this information to many other people. Before I tell you to buy this product to get some profit, but as a doctor, I really want to recommend you to introduce ХЕМOХIM to many other people to protect their health, wellness, and their happiness. This is really a great way to protect ourselves from chronic inflammation. I told you many times about immunity. I think this way I can explain what immunity is. There is an enemy, and on the front line, the NK cells are fighting against the enemy. If that's the end, we will not move on to chronic inflammation. So what's really good about ХЕМОХIM is that ХЕМOХIM plays this NK cell role. So if the natural killer cell can fight off the enemy, then that's it. But if the enemy is too strong, they send down the cytokine and bring other soldiers. So let's say there are some special corps from the enemy. If they are infants, then we are bringing our soldiers to fight against them. But as the war gets prolonged, soldiers will die. So we have this training center to train our soldiers to boost their immunity so that ХЕМOХIM can prevent the enemy cells to change the chronic inflammation. So immunity is an all-out war. So if you lose here, you will die. So once the war occurs, you need to win the war. Otherwise, we'll die. So I hope many people will protect their health and happiness with ХЕМOХIM. And after me, we have Director Kim Hyun-gyu to tell you about the development story about ХЕМOХIM, especially about how ХЕМOХIM can improve the fatigue. I think there's one thing that he's not good at. Do you know what this is? He's not good at lying. Yeah, now let's listen to his lecture. Thank you. Yeah, I'm the one who cannot lie. I think it's my first time to meet you here. I'm Atomy Global Product Branding Department Director Kim Hyun-gyu. Great to see you all. let me introduce myself. I joined Atomy last year, and prior to that, I worked at Coma BNA for more than 10 years, and I was the head of the Institute of Food Science. So I developed a lot of products for Atomy, and among them, ХЕМOHIM was the key product. At first, when I joined Coma BNA, the first thing I did was the on-site training and education. All the employees do that when they join the company. So I had to go to the manufacturing site and with the employees, I was putting the dongchai, angelica, peony in the extractor and taking the ingredients out and doing the packaging for the finished product. So I went through all this process and study about how ХЕМOHIM is produced. If I look back, it's been like 13 years since I met ХЕМOHIM. So for the last 13 years, a kid will finish high school and enter the college. So indeed, when I joined Coma BNH, my kid was elementary school student, but now my kid became an adult. So that's quite a long period. So as I was working at the research institute, I planned research about ХЕМОHIM, and I myself participated in ХЕМOHIM research and study about ХЕМOHIM. I'm not sure if you can read it from the slide, but as I did a lot of research on ХЕМOHIM, you can see my names on the patent registration and academic journals. So have a look. So as I conducted research on ХЕМОHIM, there's one thing I got really confident about. The excellence of ХЕМOHIM, where does it come from? My conclusion is ХЕМOHIM has a very special combination of ingredients. That's my conclusion. And the first thing is polyphenol. So when I say polyphenol, it's a phenol compound in plants. So it works as an antioxidant in our body. And as Rich mentioned, it can prevent inflammation and prevent aging of the cell and the formation of cancer cells. So polyphenol, the prime example is like catechin from green tea and quercetin from onions and resveratrol from grapes. These are the prime examples of polyphenol. So what about ХЕМОHIM? What kind of polyphenol is contained in ХЕМOHIM? If you look at the packaging of ХЕМOHIM, chlorogenic acid, peony fluorine, novocaine, these ingredients are the polyphenols of ХЕМOHIM. And the second part is polysaccharide. Have you heard about this term, immune polysaccharide? So polysaccharide, like the glucose, the sugar are connected in a long chain, and it forms a very big molecule, and depending on what kind of glucose is connected and how long the chain is and how many branches it has, it can become a very different polysaccharide, and the effect can vary a lot. I think you might have seen this from some commercial, aloe polysaccharide and ginseng polysaccharide. So these are really playing a big role for immunity. So these polysaccharides are contained in ХЕМОHIM a lot. So to boost the polysaccharide, ХЕМOHIM is extracting these ingredients, but not only that, there is a separate processing for this. polysaccharide processing to strengthen the polysaccharide. So this is the key processing technology for ХЕМОХИM. And thanks to the processing method, ХЕМОХIM can have a very special combination of the ingredients, polyphenol and polysaccharide. That's why ХЕМОХIM is so special. There are many good polysaccharides for ХЕМОХIM, so maybe you'll also be able to call ХЕМOHIM's polysaccharide. So the excellence of ХЕМОХIM has been demonstrated in 35 academic journals, and among them there are 14 academic journals about immunity and also some papers about fatigue, which I'm going to talk about today. And one point I want to mention is ХЕМОХIM is recognized to have double function to boost immunity and to improve fatigue. But if you look at other immunity products, you will not be able to find one that boosts immunity. So it's only ХЕМOХIM that has this function, like large ginseng and aloe products. It's usually boosting the immune effects. So as I mentioned before, thanks to the special combination of ingredients, polyphenol and polysaccharide, is not only boosting the immunity, but as was mentioned before, sometimes it increases the cytokine, sometimes it decreases. So it modulates the cytokine, the transmission of the signals, and the activation of the polysaccharide immunity effect. So depending on the condition of our human body, it regulates the ingredient. That's what the special combination of ingredients of ХЕМОХIM does, and it's well demonstrated from the science journals. That's why it says ХЕМOХIM is boosting the immunity. So from ХЕМOХIM, the heme part, HIM, M refers to modulation. So it modulates the cytokine levels in the body. So now let me talk about how it helps improve the fatigue. So research about ХЕМOХIM's role in improving fatigue. I think I can say that you are the ones who started the research on fatigue, because you experience ХЕМOХIM yourself and you're sharing the experience from it. Some people say there are less dark circles, and now I can wake up really easily in the morning. And even if I work late, I don't get tired that much. Many people say this. And as a researcher, I believe immunity and fatigue are really closely related. So I wanted to demonstrate the functionality in a scientific manner about what you experience. So that's how we started the fatigue functionality research for ХЕМОХIM. So this is the timeline. The beginning was in 2017. In 2017, based on the experience of the consumer, we started the research. And in 2023, last year, we got the approval for the functionality certificate from the KFDA. So it took quite a long time, about 7 years. And usually, to get the individual certificate from the KFDA, the focus is the functionality, the effect, and the safety of the intake, whether it's safe to the human body and whether these ingredients can be managed well. So these three things are the focus for the inspection.
However, already immunity was certified, individually certified. So about the standards and safety, ХЕМОХИM already passed them. And fatigue reduction, that effect had to be proven. And human test and animal experiment and the research papers. So that is why it took 7 years. It was already developed, but we had to go through all these processes to introduce you this year. So it was a long way for us to get the certification. And how do you define fatigue? As I mentioned before, there were a lot of expressions for fatigue, and the Korean FDA says physical and mental capabilities get reduced. That is the definition. And even after sufficient break or rest, 6 months of fatigue continue. And if it's longer than 6 months, it's chronic fatigue. If it's 1 month, over 1 month, over 6 months, do we have anyone that is going through fatigue? No one? Maybe it's thanks to the ХЕМОХИM consumption by all of you. How about around you? If there are any that is going through a hard time because of fatigue, please recommend ХЕМOХIM. The Korean FDA defines fatigue, and in order to get recognized for the functionality, as we can see from the tables, we have very broad-based research model. And it includes energy supply, antioxidant effect, and recovery from muscular damage. So these kind of experiments, plus exercise capabilities and the indices for fatigue improvement, what are the figures. So those are the numbers that we based when we were getting the certification from the FDA. So that is how 7 years passed for that. So we proved the functionality and we made it into research papers. And including Korea, in the US and Russia, in these countries, the fatigue reduction effect, the PCT international patent was registered for these countries. And even from now on, we are going to expand the country list. So let me go further in details. For animal experiment, we looked at the treadwheels or swimming time for animal experiment. So so in the water, one group was the control group that had ХЕМОХИM, and the other group was so the test group had ХЕМОХIM, the control group didn't have ХЕМOХIM. So, and then we looked at how long they were floating over water, swimming. So the mouse group that consumed the ХЕМОХIM had longer floating time. And the similar result for human applied tests. We measured the physical work, persistent tests, and how significantly helpful it was. And we used cycle ergometer. That was the research design for us when we did the human applied experiments. So there were some equipments, there were some devices that people wore. And when they cannot step on pedals because they were so tired, so how much time did it pass? and a lot of other figures were measured during the test, including exercise tolerance test. And the test group that consumed HEMOHIM had the longer duration for exercise. So you have already experienced the effect of HEMOHIM, right? And now it's scientifically proven. So these human applied experiment, actually we cooperated with the athletic department of Seoul National University, and it's published. Also, to the participants of experiment, we looked at the fatigue surveys, including FSS and MFI. And in those surveys, we were able to see how fatigued they were in everyday life. And it was also part of our human applied experiments. And the test group that consumed HEMOHIM had significant difference when it comes to physical activity and the improvement of fatigue, physical fatigue. Not only during the 4 weeks, not only during the 8 weeks, but even within 4 weeks, there was a significant improvement effect. So now we have the effects of HEMOHIM proven scientifically and also by yourselves. And more recently, we have good news. We got certified for anti-doping. I think you all heard the news. And just a while ago, there was Paris Olympics, and our national teams had accomplished a lot during the Olympics. And you have heard the word doping popping up frequently in the news, right? Doping means that an athletic consumes or injects material to improve their athletic performances. And the World Anti-Doping Committee has already designated those substances, and they are banning the substances. And in the list, there are substances that damage or can damage the athlete's health. So we don't have doping substances, and if consumed, it's completely safe. So we are now certified. So based on those research, maybe some of you might have been thinking, maybe you're an athlete. As an athlete, is it really okay to consume HEMOHIM? I'm an athlete. Is it really okay? Am I going to be okay to consume this? Maybe some of you were worried, but from now on, we are already certified. So the professional athletes can also be reassured to consume HEMOHIM. You can recommend athletes around you, so it can also be very helpful for your business running as well. And also immunity enhancement and fatigue reduction and anti-doping certification. So I think it was a very huge milestone for HEMOHIM to work towards the future. And the certification organization, the name is Informed Choice. A lot of global companies have been certified from that organization as well. So on the website of Informed Choice, if you search HEMOHIM, recovery formula is the product category. So it's for recovery, and that's the product category. And immunity, functionality, and workout support are mentioned as the purposes of consuming the product. If you look at the recent statistics, more than 60% of the Korean population are participating in the everyday life physical exercise. And as you get older, people participate in sports for all a lot. And even in everyday life, they're exercising very much. And so this certification could be good news for them as well. Lastly, I want to make a summary. I think I didn't mention this today, but this year is the 20th anniversary of the law application of for healthcare food, for health functional food. So since the beginning, I got certified for 20 total 20 products, including sulfamethyl and lutein, zeaxanthin, and more recently, the melon product, the more latest product. Maybe you know the product. So among all these products, including bitter melon, and I think ХЕМОХИM, among all these products, the most significant effect and scientifically proven, I think it will be unprecedented and unprecedented even in the future as well. I'm very confident about it. So I think it's all thanks to your love and support for ХЕМОХIM. I have 5 keywords to summarize my lecture for ХЕМОХIM. You don't have to remember other things, but let's remember these 5 keywords. First, what is it? Immunity enhancement. Second, fatigue reduction. Third, what is it? The component, the most important component, polyphenol. The fourth, polysaccharide. And the fifth, anti-doping certification. Immunity, fatigue, polyphenol, polysaccharide, anti-doping. The 5 keywords. I think you should remember these 5 keywords.